Whatever you think this game is, you're probably wrong. At least, that's true in my case. Reading the name and even watching the trailer, I couldn't put my finger on what kind of experience I was signing up for with Andrei Chernyshov's Silly Polly Beast. But I suppose that's why you come to these reviews. Despite what the title might evoke, this is not a horny game. Well, technically there are horns coming out of the lead character's head, but I digress. Real quick, support real people making real things. Head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames and you'll gain Discord access to the greatest indie gaming community. Enjoy early ad-free shows, get a shout out at the end of every video we produce, our podcast 3 days early, and so much more. But best of all, you're supporting indie visibility. Silly Polly Beast is, well, it's many things. It can be a surreal, psychotic acid trip through hell and back, both visually and narratively, a top-down twin-stick shooter in how it plays, only to randomly become a more traditional survival horror experience, or even a skateboarding game. Alright, maybe calling it a skateboarding game is a bit of a stretch, but the point is, nothing is off limits in this mind-bending indie experience that mostly seems to cater to fans of psychological horror seeking an extra dose of chaos. First, let's get the boring but oh-so-important stuff out of the way. Silly Polly Beast begins with players being able to choose between 3 different difficulty options, and they're exactly what you'd anticipate: easy, normal, and hard. Don't expect much in the way of video options, as you'll only get the basics such as resolution, VSync, anti-aliasing, shadow map size, and reflection quality. No fancy schmancy ray tracing here, nor is it needed. Accessibility options are equally limited, with a toggle for automatic weapon switching, heavy hit slow motion, text speed, hand camera shake, and enemy highlighting. And that's about all there is to be concerned with before starting a new game. It's worth noting that the game can be played with keyboard and mouse, however I played with a controller for the entirety of this review outside of Steam Deck testing. While accessibility and video options may be a bit limited, the same can't be said for the narrative of Silly Polly Beast, which seemingly knows no bounds. It's a twisted, dark tale that centers around lead heroine Polly, who mostly communicates with the world via text messages through her smartphone. Trapped within a cruel orphanage, she plans an escape where she'll meet her sister Alice at a designated bridge. The actual escape goes as planned, however, Polly's sister stops responding to her messages and ultimately never shows up. From here, the game pivots to a more supernatural vibe, where our lead character encounters a tormented demon that is chained up via 3 powerful seals. Without spoiling everything, the two strike a deal where Polly will hunt down demon lords in order to free the tormented one. Strap in because things only get weirder from there. Silly Polly Beast's surreal storytelling methods work well, even if some of its later story beats may leave players understandably confused. It's a tale that's not afraid to take risks, some of which pay off and others less so. Through fairly well-written dialogue, we learn a great deal about Polly via the messages contained on her phone, alongside various memos that are scattered throughout what is a surprisingly lengthy campaign. It's not just Polly that makes this world interesting, however, as even the main enemies, Embers, who appear as grotesquely scarred monstrous husks, look painfully human, calling back to the heaven smiles of Suda51's classic Killer 7. Players may feel a twinge of guilt having to slaughter these lumbering foes. In fact, guilt and trauma are 2 of the most prevalent themes throughout Silly Polly Beast. As you reach a train station early into your gameplay, a central hub of sorts, you'll discover that not all Embers are created equal. Some, in fact, have started a rebellion. This leads to a greater conflict with Polly at the center of it all. Are you right in your killing ways, or will morality get the best of you? There are more twists and turns in Silly Polly Beast than on a roller coaster, but the important thing to know is that its world and characters are almost always interesting, even when it is dancing on the edge of sanity. But by now you have to be wondering, how do you go about controlling Silly Polly Beast? Well, for the most part, it feels somewhere between being a twin-stick shooter and a more traditional survival horror game. But that said, it's also very much its own thing. The core gameplay loop follows a fairly linear path, with players exploring a variety of environments ranging from muddied battlefields to dank sewers, battling back foes more often than not, though the option for stealth is present. Polly can toss up the hood on her sweatshirt with the press of a button, which gives her the illusion of being invisible, though it is still easy enough to be spotted if you aren't careful. Some of your foes adorn masks similar to those seen in the indie classic Hotline Miami, so if you eventually find yourself a mask that corresponds with that type of enemy, for example a frog mask, your chances of raising suspicion will go down tremendously. Even still, stealth is not this release's strong suit, and more often than not, I avoided using it when I could. It's a bit clunky in execution, enemies spot you quite easily, and I felt even less incentivized to sneak about, as defeating foes gains you collectible versions of their masks, which can be used to unlock doorways and bonus content. Now that said, enemies do respawn in Silly Polly Beast, a choice that wasn't my favorite, but when they do, they no longer offer you much in the way of value, so sneaking or sprinting may be a more suitable option. On a second playthrough, I might try to sneak about a bit more. The more likely scenario for the vast majority of battles you'll encounter in Silly Polly Beast will see you blasting down embers using your combat skills. Polly can aim at foes with the right stick and fire away using a small variety of guns, which she can hold 2 at a time. Some enemies are quite spongy, and so you'll need to carefully dodge out of the way, or, when you inevitably run out of bullets, rely on your skateboard. That's right, your skateboard isn't just for riding, as it is also your primary melee weapon, which can be used to bash down foes with blunt force trauma. As is often the case with melee combat, it does become important to keep an eye on your stamina gauge, as running out of stamina can leave you susceptible to attacks. Polly also can collect disgusting larvae, which act as grenades. These larvae can be tossed at free will, but also stuffed down certain tree trunks to cause a guaranteed death for one of your enemies. Outside of that, she eventually learns various rituals which can do everything from levitate our protagonist to summon demonic spikes to clear out the screen. While rituals also play a hand in the title's light puzzle solving, they are more interesting when available in combat sections, though they can only be accessed at specified areas that are quite obviously marked. See that demonic circle on the ground? Yeah, that's the one. Combat doesn't feel terrible, though I did find some of the game's enemy AI to verge on being cheap. Enemies can deal massive damage out of nowhere, gang up on you, and even your environment can cause harm, such as a red mist that lingers at the edges of the screen and will blast you with spikes should you venture too far. These, amongst other factors, led to plenty of annoying deaths, further punctuated by a lack of available health items at times. There's a lot of moving pieces that can make things a bit chaotic, but thankfully Silly Polly Beast offers a decent checkpoint system that will typically at worst have you repeating the last battle you died on. Boss encounters are interesting affairs, often offering layered patterns that will require Polly to use all of the skills that she's earned up to that point. While a few of them were a bit tedious and frustrating, I admired the creativity that went into these encounters. Overall, I like the combat enough, but can't deny that it comes with plenty of annoying moments. Polly doesn't level up like we've seen in so many other titles. Instead, her stats kinda stay relatively the same throughout. Yes, she will gain those aforementioned rituals, and she can buy a few items to help, such as a jacket for better defense, but don't expect a traditional XP system nor a massive skill tree. Mostly, getting stronger and unlocking more powerful weapons feels tied to story progression, meaning that there's plenty of areas where you won't be able to level your way through, and do in fact need to master the game's mechanics to their fullest. But what about those moments outside of combat, you ask? Well, that's where things get more complicated. You see, every now and then, Silly Polly Beast loves to change its gameplay entirely. For example, in Chapter 4, you'll find yourself roaming halls, trying to avoid a monster in similar fashion to Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, all while rummaging through rooms for items and solving some light puzzles. To make that less complicated for you to understand, anticipate the game becoming somewhat of a 2D survival horror experience. But that's not all. When traversing certain tunnels, you may opt to take part in a skateboarding minigame. These minigames are one of the best ways to earn cash, but can be pretty annoying. Consider one hit acts as a fail state and you need to start over again. These can also be the way that you get to new areas of the game. There is a fast travel system as well, and you can skip the skateboarding sections altogether if you want to get there quicker. Of course, that means missing out on all the cash. Some of these ideas work better than others, but you have to at least love the creativity that's been poured into the entire experience. What's that cash that I just talked about used for, you might be wondering? Well, a shopkeeper whose location appears at various times throughout gameplay will sell Polly restorative items, new gear, bombs, and just about everything in between. He also hosts a hidden library in the bathroom where fun stickers for your skateboard and other little bonuses can be unlocked. The problem is, cash is really hard to come by outside of grinding out battles or the not-so-fun skateboarding missions, so purchasing anything can feel like a slog. Silly Polly Beast's visuals are disgustingly gorgeous, reminding me of not only the previously mentioned Killer 7, but also one of my favorite indies in more recent times, Signalis. Its haunting environments, often drenched in rain and fog, work beautifully with the chilling creature design. And while the game is mostly a low-poly affair, no pun intended, its art is stunning throughout, with my only real complaint being that character portrait arts could have been a bit more varied. Polly's scared face in particular was overused. Sound design is equally excellent, with some hard-hitting electronic tracks during battles, quirky synths when wandering environments, and great sound effects that bring this terrifying world to life. Performance was solid too, as I didn't come across very many frame rate drops on my PC, and during my brief testing on Steam Deck, the game looked great, and was even hitting 60 FPS in the few areas that I tried. While it stubs its toe a few times, Silly Polly Beast is a fun, creative, and creepy indie release that deserves your attention and support. It is so filled to the brim with creativity, in fact, that it's easy to overlook many of its flawed and often illogical gameplay decisions. The game has a great atmosphere, an interesting story, and its hodgepodge of ideas that on paper shouldn't come together mostly do. Mostly. If you like your games a bit psychedelic and are open to a mix of Hotline Miami meets top-down twin-stick shooter, meets Resident Evil, meets Silent Hill, meets... you get the point. Silly Polly Beast isn't for everyone, but it was very much for me. Oh, and did I mention you drag bodies around in this game to solve some of the puzzles? Just saying. If that's not a selling point, I don't know what is. All of this is to say, Silly Polly Beast is not in fact a hentai game. It's a strange release that will draw you in and keep you on the edge of your seat, unable to predict what lies around each corner in both gameplay and story. At I Dream of Indie Games, we do believe games are so much more than a number. That's why we have our Genie Lamp tier system. You want to avoid that dreaded Indie Krampus for the worst of the worst, but we go all the way up to the elusive golden Genie Lamp of approval for those essential releases. And when it comes to Silly Polly Beast, I'm going to award it the great Silver Genie Lamp of approval.